And we're delighted to be once again talking with Maestro David Wroe. David, where are you talking to us from today?
Hello, Steve. It's a delight to be with you. And yes, indeed, I am talking from central New Jersey, specifically Westfield, New Jersey, which is just the other side of Newark Airport, and a skip and a jump from skip, hop and jump from Manhattan.
Right. And we should tell people who might not be familiar with your career, many are, of course, but you are the director of the New Jersey Festival Orchestra. You've been there for 27 years, but you've also conducted the St. Louis Symphony, the Boston Symphony in my hometown here, the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, and the New York City Opera. And I'm just scratching the surface. You were also an assistant conductor to none other than the late Seiji Ozawa. So you've had a very wonderful and distinguished career. I wanted, before we get into your work with Sound Espressivo, you have too many orchestras for me to keep track of, but we'll talk about them.
Too many for me to keep track of.
What was it like to work with Seiji Ozawa?
Well, it was a seminal experience for me and everyone who came in contact with his musical persona. Naturally, and obviously a giant in the musical world, and a conductor's conductor. What do I mean by that? He, and I mean this in the best way, his gestural expression was almost balletic in concept, and I have never witnessed someone who can better with his fingers, with his wrist, with his forearm, with his arm, with his physical persona, express the music more clearer than Seiji. That's on an interpretive side. The other side of that is that I don't think there's ever been a conductor who was more clear in his gesture, which is as you know, terribly important, and perhaps the priority for orchestral players. We all, both conductors and orchestral musicians, we all have a concept of where the music goes, and in the ideal world, we come to some kind of consensus. But without clarity of gesture, simply to coordinate a double bass that might be 40, 50 yards away from a first violinist, without that, we're not even getting out of the gate. And Seiji was just a master of a gesture, both with regards to interpreting the music and also clarity of beat.
So this was somewhat early in your career, and tell me how working with him shaped your own approach to the podium.
Yeah, great question. So I would say, firstly, as a young conductor, the gestural element, I know I'm focusing a lot on that in this early part of this interview. The gestural element was so important to one's own development, my own development as a young conductor. Of course, I was constantly thinking how to be most effective on the podium, and in the 5 years I was up in Tanglewood, 3 as two as a fellow, and another 2.5 as the assistant conductor. A lot of my time was looking at Seiji, and so he had a huge influence on me and how I look as a conductor, and how that look translates to facilitating a quality performance from the orchestra. So that was one major influence. The second was, like any conductor, they tend to have an affinity or a particular expertise in certain types of repertoire. And so the combination of watching and seeing Seiji work with a particular type of repertoire that fit him like a glove was inspirational and affected my approach to that composer. So, as you might expect, someone who has great facility, great gestural facility, fits very well certain types of technically quite complex pieces of music, such as, I remember to this day him conducting Bartók's Miraculous Mandarin. I remember to this day him conducting Rite of Spring. I remember to this day him deftly navigating a very dynamic performance of Symphonie Fantastique. So these are all orchestral works, which I'm sure you will agree, Steve, have such dynamic diversity, whether it be tempo changes, whether it be orchestral colors, whether it be tricky and dynamic rhythms, all things that a conductor can be either a net plus or a net minus on. And he fit this kind of repertoire, at the risk of repeating myself, like a hand fitting a very well fit glove. And he animated this kind of repertoire. So he helped me see the genius of these works. And since then, I can't imagine it being done. Of course, I can't imagine it. I say this tongue in cheek a little. I can't imagine these works being done in any other way. Of course, one can, and we see other great performances. But I was truly inspired by how he, with the Boston Symphony and the Tanglewood Institute Orchestra, which was top notch, how he navigated these pieces of music.
Yeah, his approach to conducting, you would say, was quite a bit different than Leinsdorf.
Yes. Well, and now we'll get into a slightly controversial. Controversial might be too strong a word, but perhaps a debate a little about what is the best direction of a conductor, and there are two schools of thought on this, aren't there? There's one that a conductor should be a pure facilitator to otherwise get out of the way of the orchestra members to then give of their best. So a 90-piece orchestra with the help of a conductor might be a wonderful enlarged chamber ensemble. That's one school of thought, and in particularly with these kind of conductors, they're minimalistic. They're merely massaging in very subtle terms the innate energy of this force. Mm-hmm. Some people argue a little like riding a very well-trained racehorse. Then there's the other style of conducting where the power of personality can galvanize everyone in a very efficient, which is very important nowadays with the lack of rehearsals, in a very efficient and commanding way to create a coordinated interpretation of a piece of music, which is so definitive that it knocks the socks off an audience, and they come away, mind-boggled, or whatever this phrase is.
Yeah,
I would argue there's legitimacy in reason to both these styles.
Very diplomatic. Well, that's very good. Now let's bring it a little bit closer to home. I would say, I'm guessing Seiji was one of your major influences, but I'm sure you had others. But you've brought all of that to the last 27 years with as director of the New Jersey Festival Orchestra. Now I'm very impressed with the traveling that you've done around the state, because I read that you've performed in every county. So you have brought classical music, I'm guessing, to some counties which may not have had a full professional symphony orchestra before.
Well, that is true. We have morphed or evolved into a much more regional-based company, the New Jersey Festival Orchestra. Not to get into too many in the weeds too much, but 20, 30 years ago, there were maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of symphonic ensembles in New Jersey that there are now. There's been
4 or 5 times more 20 years
more,
ago?
yes,
Oh.
many more symphony ensembles
Hmm.
than there are now. We've seen, unfortunately, a contraction of both professional and semi-professional and amateur orchestras over the years. It's so I would say, in part because of the dynamism of both the artistic staff leadership and board leadership, we have not only survived that contraction, if you like, but we've taken advantage of it. And
Right.
Whereas in the 40, 50 years ago, in the founding of this orchestra, it was truly a county orchestra called the Westfield Symphony, and served a very small community through collaborations, through fusions, through mergers. We have established ourselves as a truly regional orchestra called the New Jersey Festival Orchestra, and stepped into markets that were once occupied by other people, but
Right.
other organizations, but due to them not being able to sustain themselves, we have moved into these markets and sustained at least the performance of symphonic music in that area. So we indeed have branched out through performances, but also all sorts of different outreach programs. And yes, we go as far north as Bergen County, and as far south as on occasion Atlantic City.
Wow, that's commendable to be able to travel with an orchestra like that in the region that you specialize in. So that's very wonderful. Before we get down to your work at Carnegie Hall and with Sound Espressivo, just a question about your commitment to mentoring people. You're known for your positions at universities. You must love youth orchestras and mentoring people. What youth orchestras have you worked with, and how does the mentoring take shape?
Well, mentoring for me was born out of me being mentored, and me recognizing the value of that for a developing artist, and it creating a platform for everything that I have been blessed to achieve since. So, and that mentoring happened very clearly in my years as a fellow at Tanglewood Musical Institute and at other places as well. And when I was blessed to develop a conducting career, it always was in my mind to give back what I had been given, and what had then allowed me to achieve what I'm now achieving. So mentoring is an elemental part of my musical makeup. And now I am blessed through a number of different vehicles to be able to do that. I was the director of orchestras at NYU for a year. I was the interim music director at Brown University. I was music director at Montclair State University for 4 years. I've worked internationally, in Korea in particular, with various youth festivals. And now, throughout my career, and now we have this wonderful, I'm blessed with this wonderful mentoring opportunity through Sound Espressivo and its alter ego virtual concert halls, through Orchestra Manhattan, to support, mentor top flight, up and coming talent, both in high profile venues such as Carnegie Hall and in recording opportunities, which then has a complete service process for them to get their names out. So Sound Espressivo, we not only do recordings with people, but we provide labeling and then distribution and that business style mentoring from start to finish. Now, I'm not so much involved in that post-production stuff other than artistically, But for me to be working in Carnegie Hall, for example, with extraordinary talent, which is competed for throughout, both nationally and internationally, and then see them flourish, is a very exciting thing. I can give you just one example of a wonderful 13-year-old Kate Lee, who we recorded, I think, the Sanson with, second piano concerto. I
Would
think
that be the Mendelssohn Concerto No. 2?
Oh, it could be, yes. Forgive me. The Mendelssohn 2, that process of discovering her artistic personality, me working with her both on an individual case and then with the orchestra, and then doing a recording with her, and 50, 60,000 I don't know what the word is it exposure?
I stand corrected. It was a Beethoven concerto. I just
Beethoven. Okay.
And
she has 50, 60,000 visits now. Downloads on Spotify.
Spotify, yes.
That is such an enjoyable process of me being part of her success. I hope I played a small role, and seeing someone like that flourish in a way that she deserves. So it brings me enormous pleasure to mentor, both at this very dynamic and high exposure level, as well as just coaching and teaching through outreach programs that we do through New Jersey Festival Orchestra.
Yeah, and you've also recorded with Lucy Tang. Is that your recording?
Yes.
That's the Mendelssohn Concerto No. 2.
Yes, yes.
And those recordings, I'm sure, are doing well. And with Matthew Brand, who we've interviewed before.
Yes. What a dynamic and interesting personality he is.
He is, yeah. So those recordings are very, very important. Now, you have some concerts coming up with Orchestra Manhattan as part of Sound Espressivo. Tell us what's coming up in the future.
Yes. So fall is a busy time for Orchestra Manhattan and virtual concert halls. We often couple a Carnegie Hall performance with a recording session. Mm-hmm. And we try, not always works out, but we try as much as possible for the live performance then to be recorded the next day. Sometimes works out like that. Sometimes it's an independent thing. However, it's an important time for the orchestra to come together and work with all sorts of talent. We will be in Carnegie Hall in November of 2026, on the 24th of November, and we will follow that with a recording, and we may also do a collaboration with some Canadian artists in late September with regards to other recordings. Mm-hmm. So the final, it has to be the final details of that have to be worked out. But we're back in business in September and in November with Orchestra Manhattan. And those activities can be found on the Sound Espressivo website.
And how is it different making a recording from performing live?
Ooh, a great question. Well, I'll tell you one thing, Steve, which we will appreciate. We, as music is a very physical thing, and we react to our acoustics, don't we? Now, sometimes what is good for a live performance is antithetical. Is sometimes the antithesis of what we will be wanting for recording. We want resonance, we want ambiance, we want large resounding halls where sound is bouncing off many walls and then blending to be a beautiful thing passed into the ears of an audience. That's a live performance. Recording is a little different. We sometimes want to take out of the mix, so to speak, extraneous noises, and we want as pure a sound as possible. So a certain dryness, a certain crispness, a certain directness going into the microphones, which then we can manipulate to a certain extent, is sometimes what we're looking for. So, and I would say as a performer, us being in these different environments can either add to the stress or tension or enhance it. I always like a resonant hall. It makes me jive a little more with the sound, and I can feel more in control of trusting my ears to make judgments on where we're going with regards to refinement of performance. Recording is a little different in that what I might be hearing might not be exactly what the sound engineer is hearing. So judgment calls and manipulation of sound and colors not only happens in the recording studio, but perhaps in the recording booth, as well as a negotiation between myself and the recording engineer. So it's a different skill and all fun, but applying different techniques. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, and one difference, of course, is that in a recording, if there's a clam, it's a technical term, you can stop it and do it again.
Indeed.
Can't quite do that in a performance.
So yeah, that perhaps adds the tension or stress or whatever the word is in a live performance. You've got one go, whereas of course recordings we can manipulate the end product to a certain extent.
Can also do a lot of editing.
That's what I mean. Yes.
I guess it was Glenn Gould who was kind of a pioneer, and he just dropped out of the concert stage and was exclusively a recording artist.
Yes. As were the Beatles, I think.
Yeah, and Horowitz actually, when he took when he took his 12-year sabbatical or break, he was pretty busy. He made 5 records, so recording is very important. Now, just David, you said something earlier which interested me, that there are fewer orchestras in New Jersey, and maybe this is true around the country today than there were 25 years ago. So there's been a kind of shrinkage of the number of ensembles. I wouldn't have known that. What's going on?
Well, I think it's the stresses and strains of the industry. Whether you're tuned in with the League of American Orchestras, or you're running a non-for-profit symphony orchestra, or ballet, or opera, or any fine arts performing organization, we recognize the huge challenges of getting people to come and listen to your product. And on the one hand, but secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, to be able to fund this, one has to remember, and these are just general terms, that a healthy fine arts performing organization, performing non-for-profit, can be running at a 50 to 60% loss. What do I mean by that? I mean that earned revenues,
right,
earned income, which is primarily ticket sales. It might be a cup saying I love the New Jersey Festival Orchestra, or a t-shirt saying I love Maestro Wroe. Not many of those sell. But the vast majority of earned income is ticket sales. But that might account for only 30 to 40% of the income side of the budget. The rest of that is raised through foundations, through corporate sponsorship, and through individual giving. And in these areas, just to sustain a balanced budget in the fundraising area, it is very, very difficult and getting harder.
And of course, the technology is changing everything. Last week, I happened into a restaurant, and I noticed that they were playing music of Bill Evans, one of my very favorite pianists. Isn't that interesting? And the guy said, "Do you want to take this out or eat it?" I said, "I'm going to eat it here. You're playing this wonderful music." I wasn't really listening too closely, but then I sat down and I noticed that, first of all, he was famous for his trios, but I noticed there weren't any drums. It was just piano and bass. I listened a little bit closer, and it sounded a little flat. It sounded not quite. And then I went up and I said, "Who's this music? Show it." And he takes out his pad, and it's Spotify, and the pianist was something like David Neal. I didn't recognize the name, and then I realized I guessed what happened, and I went to Gemini AI and said, "Is Spotify deliberately copying the style of Bill Evans and making their own music out of it?" And the answer was definitely, absolutely
So
yes.
it was AI produced.
It had nothing to do with Bill Evans, but it was a deliberate copy of his style.
Oh my goodness.
And I was dumbfounded by it. And it is more and more and more of this happening. And I think, AI has done some wonderful things. It's going to do some wonderful things in the medical field. But in music, I'm a little bit worried.
That is shocking to me, what you've told me. One has to believe that there is innate and irreplaceable value in the communal live activity of a concert on multiple levels. People in the audience coming together to as a community, experience passively other people coming together to experience and actively, on an active way, by performing, come together to create something unique, live, and immediately communicative. There has to be some inspirational value in that
Yes.
is antithetical to AI.
Yes.
We have to hope that that is recognized as we move forward. I've got a feeling, forgive me to interrupt you, but I've got a feeling, I'm hopeful that is the case. I'm hopeful that there's going to be a certain backlash to digitalization generally, and for a hunger or a seeking for tangible live experience, void of digital interaction.
I'll give you a hopeful note. In the podcast universe, which I'm a little bit involved with, there's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcasts are produced every day that are fake, that are just AI. Okay, the good news is nobody's listening to them.
Okay.
Now, looking to the future, David, just in the time remaining to us, what are some of your future plans? What are you doing the rest of the summer? And what are some of your big highlights coming up in the fall?
Well, thank you for asking. I share my time in a number of ways. I'm blessed to have a relatively varied portfolio of activities. Conducting, it's likely I'm going to, I am, in addition to music directing the New Jersey Festival Orchestra and Sound Espressivo Orchestra Manhattan, I'm also the music director of the Irish Tenors, believe it or not. And that takes me on 2 tours, one in December at Christmas time, and then the other in St. Paddy's Week, which basically expands to St. Patrick's Month. This is actually quite a very enjoyable experience for me, in that I'm working with 3 fabulous tenors, Anthony Kearns, the quite famous Ronan Tynan, and who you might know from Boston. He has a house up in Boston, and we perform in there every year. And also Patrick Leyland, now a new member. And the fun of this is that we're working with large orchestras with these players, and they have these singers, and they have orchestrated many of the beautiful Irish melodies in fantastic ways, and employed really wonderful arrangers to make colorful, dynamic and dramatic orchestral renditions of these songs. I'll give you an example, whether it be Fields of Athenry or Grace or Red is the Rose. We have these arrangements made by, for example, David Cullen, who was Andrew Lloyd Webber's orchestrator, and the beautiful orchestrations that he's created for big symphony orchestras are a joy to get one's hands on. So even though it's slightly more in the popular idiom, it's a heck of a lot of fun. So doing that, I have a relatively healthy guest conducting activities that takes me nationally and international. I just about 4 months ago, I came back from Armenia, believe it or not, with the Armenian National Philharmonic, and I'm returning. I'm
familiar with that orchestra. It's a wonderful orchestra.
Oh, extraordinary orchestra, and yeah, it's. I think they were on tour, I think, last year as well, and of course, great in the Russian tradition. You know, they were part of the old Soviet Union, and their string playing in particular is very, very strong. Maestro conservatory style playing, and you can just imagine what they play when they get their hands on Shostakovich and the like. So, and also I have a long relationship with a number of orchestras in China.
China?
Yes.
Shanghai Symphony by any chance?
Not the Shanghai. I've been to Macau, I've been to Nanjing, I've been to Hangzhou, all over the place, but not Shanghai. I look forward to that.
Yeah, there's a new hall there. Well, you have a very exciting dates coming up, and we look forward to hearing you at Carnegie Hall, I think in the coming months. And you're a very busy guy, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. David Wroe, the music director of Orchestra Manhattan and the resident orchestra for Sound Espressivo. It's wonderful to talk with you again.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.